Back in the early 1900s, the chemical company DuPont started using their now famous DuPont Analysis, which you can't escape business school not learning about. DuPont Analysis serves as a framework for analyzing fundamental performance of a company. More specifically, we want to zoom in on return on equity. Simply put, return on equity equals net income divided by shareholders' equity. In the spirit of my last episode about what happens when you hit 1,000 lots, I'd like to press a bit further on the importance of recapitalization. Let's do some math. Say you buy $1 million mobile home park with $250,000 out of pocket and you distribute $50,000 per year. So you achieve a 20% cash-on-cash return. That's strong. Let's assume the property doesn't appreciate at all by end of year one and you had interest-only payments for the first year, meaning your equity remains the exact same since you didn't pay any principal to the loan. Then, at the end of year one, your ROE would be $50,000 of distributable income divided by $250,000 of equity, or an ROE of 20%. Now, let's say you get the rents up, smooth out the costs, and coast for several years at that $50,000 per year in distributable income mark. A lot of folks I talk to dream of owning a mobile home park outright. So, let's examine what happens in this scenario after potentially decades. Let's just say you pay down $250,000 of the loan, putting the principal at $500,000, and you still kick out that $50K a year. But your equity now sits at $500,000, again, assuming no property appreciation. Now your ROE would then have dropped to 10%. But that's totally not fair. Let's assume your property has doubled over that long period of time. At $2 million in fair market value, with a loan balance of $500,000, your equity is now $1.5 million. Exciting, right? Now you have well over $1 million in equity and a nice income stream. Not so fast. Your ROE now becomes $50,000 in distributable income divided by $1.5 million of equity, or just an ROE of 3.33%. To be fair, your rents will also go up during this time frame. So let's say you have doubled your distributable income to $100,000. Exciting, right? Well, do the math again. 100,000 divided by 1.5 million is just 6.67%. Last episode, I belabored the point of how liabilities threaten the profitability of long-term holds. I also mentioned how your front-end capital might not be the highest and best for said property in the long run. And don't forget, tax shield vessels like depreciation go away in time. All of this to say, while exciting to have equity of over $1 million and cash flows at $100,000 per year, what if I told you that may not be your best course of action? Let's say you conservatively refinance your property, taking out $500,000 and pushing that loan balance back up, now all the way to $1 million. Your cash flow will go down, but even if it goes down to $50,000 from $100,000, your ROE would then sit at 5%. Plus, you now have $500,000, which can then be used to buy similarly performing properties. In fact, if you bought an identically performing asset, your $500,000 at the 20% ROE basis would yield $100,000 in net income in and of itself. Plus, you keep the asset you already have, which kicks out $50,000. So your income goes from $100,000 pre-finance to 150 post-finance, plus you have more assets which arguably increase each other's value via a potential portfolio sale. Enough math. I want to say this. You need to recycle your capital. Out of the gate, this example hit a 20% ROE. However, many decades later, that ROE dropped to possibly as low as 3%. While a middle-class mindset laser focuses on cash flow, the rich person's mindset focuses on metrics like ROE. How do I best use my capital? Does it make sense to have untapped equity sitting on a property like that for decades? Can I realistically multiply my returns again? Or should I take out a bunch of cash and place it in a more capital preservation type play with less risk? These are questions you need to be asking. Ignore the seduction and illusion of safety that cash flow provides. Like Ryan Smith said in his interview with me, you can't earn yourself wealthy. Whether you are super passionate about mobile home parks and want to stay here forever, or you simply want the cash grab, both extremes need to be thinking about how to place their own capital. By the way, since the equity portion of the ROE calculation sits in the denominator, the longer you sit on the property, the bigger that number will grow as you pay the loan principal down and as the property appreciates. This means that the longer you sit on a property without recycling your capital, the smaller your ROE gets in time. Unless you really crank up profitability, and the most likely way you're going to do that is aggressively raising the rents. And you may not want to do that. I encourage you to do the math yourself. Long-term holds, call them for decades, don't actually make a lot of sense, with exception to legacy assets in primo locations. Infrastructure, lawsuits, capital infusions, replacing homes, etc. will come in time and will negatively affect the net income portion of your ROE calculation and may not add equity, meaning your ROE shrinks even more. Regardless, if you sell or refinance, think like a rich person. Do the math. Optimize your capital.